Okay, I think we've given people a chance to jump on here. It's 11:32 according to my computer clock. So without further ado, I'm actually Dave Platty. I told others that's my fake Google account when I log on to buy stuff or look at newspapers. So I say Carl Uteri, see you. At any rate, got Director of Health and Performance on right now, Miguel Rueda. He's been with us since 2006, so he's well versed in CU after 14, 15 years. And he's here to discuss some of the protocols and testing procedures, take a few questions from you before Coach Durrell comes on in about 15 minutes. So, Miguel, do you have an opening statement or just want to take questions from the get-go?
I can go ahead and take questions from the get-go.
All
this
right.
is a little spotty. I don't know if it's this setup or if it's you, Dave.
Everyone knows my technology suffers, so you never know. So we'll just go. If you have a question for Miguel, just shoot me an indication in the chat feature, and I will call on you, and then we'll proceed from there. So, Brian Howell, it looks like you've got the first question. Take it away.
Hey, Miguel. Hope you're doing well. So my first question is basically, would you mind kind of running through what the procedure is going to be every morning before practice and kind of the protocols you guys are going to try to go through during camp?
Yeah, sure. Like I said, this is a little spotty, so I think what I heard is just go through sort of our protocols for the athletes coming into camp. So there's going to be very similar. Football, men's and women's basketball are going to be pretty much the same. It's just obviously the volume would be a little bit different. But we have athletes arriving to the facility. We have a testing station when they come in. It's in the IPF for football. They immediately come in. We have 10 groups tested at a time. Obviously, everybody's spaced out on how they arrive to the facility. These 10 people will sit socially distanced. They will collect using an antigen test. They'll collect their sample. They'll be instructed and observed. That sample then goes into a test tube. From there, we have to do a couple things to that tube. We then take the sample, we run it over to our testing room. We have to wait 15 minutes before we can actually run a test on that sample. Once that 15 minutes is up, we go ahead, run the test, and within 2 to 3 minutes, we get a result for the antigen test there. So it takes, I think today for football, I think it was maybe 2 hours, 15 minutes to get everybody through.
Great. Next question from Adam Munsterteiger.
Well, I can clarify a little something on that too, Dave. Sorry. So once the sample is taken, the athletes will go to a holding area in the IPF. They'll wait there. They'll get radioed when their test is clear. If they're negative, they go ahead into the facility, and then they can start the morning.
Okay, Adam, you're up.
Hey, Miguel. You mentioned antigen testing being done daily. I think you guys are going to be doing PCR testing as well. Could you kind of, in layman's terms, break down the differences with those tests?
Well, so we're going to go ahead and do 2 tests. I think it's best if maybe I'll. How about if I release something? We have a little document that describes something that gives a little bit more detail to the antigen test versus the PCR test. We'll go ahead. I'll send that to Dave, and he can kick that out to you guys.
Good deal. Justin Guerriero.
Hey, Miguel, thanks for doing this. And you'll pardon me on the literal first day of camp for being somewhat of a Debbie Downer, but just out of curiosity, in the event of a positive test, I mean, kind of just, could you walk me through what happens in the event that does happen with a positive test?
Sure thing. None of us are superstitious, so it doesn't matter that you asked that question, right? We'll go ahead if we have a positive test. So the team is staying at the hotel. If we have a positive test, if it's someone that is a student athlete that lives on campus, we'll utilize campus resources and get them isolated in a campus room. If they are have an off-campus residence, we'll go ahead and have them back to their off-campus residence. Right now, asymptomatic positives are 10 days of isolation. And then if your symptomatic positives are typically a little bit longer than that.
You know, Miguel, we always often get asked, what is the difference between symptomatic and asymptomatic?
Okay. Difference between asymptomatic. So asymptomatic positive is someone who tests positives, but really doesn't exhibit any symptoms of the virus. Symptomatic positive just means that they may have some symptoms. Typically the symptoms we've seen, you know, you've heard of a few of them: loss of taste, loss of smell, tends to mimic a little bit like cold-like symptoms. We haven't seen any significant symptoms or troubling issues.
Okay, Henry Chisholm?
Hey, Miguel, I'm curious how you guys structure the testing in terms of when people get tested. So is it different groups that come in at different times throughout the morning? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so if you can imagine, over 100 athletes getting tested in the morning is going to take a bit of time, but we can't have everybody show up at the same time. We're following local health guidelines on how our athletes are supposed to get to the facility. When they come into the facility, we have a testing spot of, like I said, for 10 people at a time. Some of that is coach dependent. You know, they may want groups here to get cleared earlier to go ahead and do some other things. Or, you know, maybe we're letting some of the the seniors sleep in a little bit longer.
Back to Brian Howell?
Hey, Miguel, I was just curious what the process was like for you and your staff to learn the Quidel testing and how long it's taken you to get up to speed on this, or if you're up to speed yet.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, we're still learning a lot about the disease, a lot about the testing, a lot about different types of testing. Everything is so fluid right now. We did receive these units. We've had them for about 10 days. Our staff has done some extensive training on them. We've had representatives from the Quidel come out and teach our staff. There's been some online education. There's constant communication with the peers around the Pac-12 in terms of what they're seeing, sort of best practices. I think that they have become pretty fluent with it, thank God. We are also training. We have some people that are some researchers that have been doing testing across campus, and they're joining our staff in the mornings to do some testing with our athletes. So we're getting them up and running. You know, at the end of the day, my staff still has to be able to take care of the athletes.
Terry Fry. Terry, you're on mute.
There you go. How confident are you, or are you confident, are you concerned about whether it's possible to enforce a semi-bubble conditions for young college-aged athletes?
You cut out a little bit. Can you repeat the question? Because I want to make sure I answer that correctly.
How concerned or confident are you that you can enforce bubble-like conditions for young college athletes?
Okay. At the end of the day, you know, a lot is going to be up to the student athlete. I think that our student athletes have been here, particularly football has been here since June, I believe. Feels like a long time ago. Just trying to get back here. They missed their spring, trying to get training. We had an onboarding process that was pretty extensive. They worked really hard with our strength and conditioning coaches, and all of a sudden the bottom fell out. You know, these guys have put in a lot of time and effort and energy, and when you sort of take something away or take away what they're working for, that's when I get concerned. Now that our student athletes have a season to prepare for, I feel really good about them making the right decisions, because this is something they really want. They've worked so hard to get here. I think that we're going to see some great things from these student athletes because they actually have something to work for.
Back to Pat Rooney.
Hey, Miguel, I apologize. I jumped in a minute or two late. So if this was addressed, again, I apologize. But maybe to clarify one point, will the testing procedure be, is it exactly the same for the basketball players when they start practice on Wednesday? Are there any subtleties that might be different for their procedure than what you're doing in football?
It'll be pretty much the same. We're doing 6 days of antigen testing and 1 PCR test a week.
Terry Fry, did you have another one? You're on mute again.
No.
Okay. Brian Howell?
Miguel, you mentioned that the team is staying at the hotel. Are you able to talk more about that? As like how long the team is planning to stay there and kind of what those conditions are like? Is it really just kind of keeping them there and not letting them go out to the store or anything like that?
Sorry, Brian, I only caught part of that. Can you repeat that again?
Yeah, you mentioned that the team is staying at the hotel. I'm curious if you could go into how long they're going to be staying there and kind of what the conditions are like. Are the athletes allowed to go out to eat or go to the store or anything like that?
So we submitted a plan to public health. I think what we incorporated in there was a lot of the public health orders. We do have meal services for our student athletes here in our facility. Right now we're grab and go with everything. So they'll take their food back to the hotel. Certainly as classes open up, they'll be on campus taking classes, but as their day winds down, they're back in the hotel, and they'll take their food back to the hotel to eat. Can
you say how long that team is planning on doing that? Is it several weeks? Is it all throughout camp?
Yeah, right now I believe it is through camp, but I think Rick can verify that, or Carl can verify that.
It's actually 2 weeks, Brian, and they don't check in until after they get their grab and go meal today. They'll check in for the first time tonight, and in 2 weeks they're going to get with Boulder County Health and reassess everything at that time. I don't see any other questions popping up on chat, so this is your opportunity to let me know if anyone has a follow-up. Otherwise, we will cut Miguel loose. Oh, Henry Chisholm's got another. Go ahead, Henry.
Miguel, I'm curious how many people are staying in each room at the hotel.
Yeah, so how many people in each room at the hotel? So what we try to do is mimic living conditions off campus. They have actually, I think we changed that for this for the hotel. There should be 2 people per room.
Also, there'll be 10 staff members there to monitor everything and be sure all the protocols are being followed. Any additions to that, Miguel, you want to add?
10 staff members there to make sure. 10 staff members there to make sure people follow protocols.
Yeah. So there'll be some staff there, make sure protocols are followed, make sure that there is proper social distancing and cloth face coverings when outside of rooms. We're just trying to limit the ability, if the disease were to show up, limit the ability for it to spread. Just best practices.
Okay, last question will be coming from Terry Fry.
How much have you learned? How much have you been following? How much have you taken from the bubble experiences of the NHL, the NBA, MLB and now the NFL. Are you learning anything
Yeah,
from those?
yeah. I mean, I think we all are, right? We just have to watch the NFL to appreciate the bubble experience for the NBA and the NHL. I think there was a lot of great things that were able to get done because of the NBA and NHL protocols. It's tough for a college campus to be able to go ahead and bubble some people. I do think there'll be a little bit more of a natural bubble created as we get past Thanksgiving and a number of students leave. The community will look a little different.